5 months was only an instant for the illusory spirit space, which had existed for millions of years. The world was still filled with the black fog, isolating them from sight. The ground was covered with swamps, and it was an extremely dangerous place. No one knew if a monster would suddenly appear in the black fog in front of them. Xiao Ao, what should we do next? Xiao Yan communicated with the Xiao Ao with his mind. He looked around vigilantly. He couldn't afford to be careless in a place like this. If he wasn't careful, he might suffer fatal injuries. Before he came in, Xiao Yan also asked about the Xiao Ao. Based on the latter's miraculous memory, Wu Shaoqi was very familiar with the location of the Shaman Yin Meridian, while Wu Shaoqi had studied the few major Yin meridians in illusory spirit space. She could also find the location of the Wu Yin Meridian in this place where it was almost impossible to distinguish the north from the south. Swoosh! A ray of light flashed out. The Xiao Ao didn't take human form. It sat on Xiao Yan's shoulder and looked around with its big eyes. After feeling it for a while, it stretched out its finger and pointed in a direction. Over there. It's closer to here. We should be able to reach there soon. It nodded. The origin chis around Xiao Yan's body were moving, and the flames on his palm were also flickering. He quickly rushed towards the direction pointed by the Xiao Ao, and at the same time, he was prepared to deal with any sudden situation. Sizzle sizzle. Black chi surged within the illusory spirit space. The swamp on the ground seemed to flow. Xiao Yan accidentally stepped into it while hurrying along the way. The area below his waist quickly sunk in. He relied on the strength of his waist to break free. Along the way, he met a few monarch spirit-level monsters. Xiao Yan directly shattered them with a punch. He did not have any intention of picking up the scattered origin beads. With the origin monarch chis that he currently needed for his cultivation, even 10 Emperor tier origin beads from Emperor tier monsters would not be able to increase his cultivation by 1 tier. These monarch spirits that were only monarch spirit were no longer useful. After an unknown period of time, the Wu Yin Meridian finally appeared in front of him. Under the cover of the endless black chi, it appeared mysterious and dangerous. 5 months ago, the canyon that Wu Shaoqi and the Devil Ape were chasing appeared in front of them. After resting for a moment under the Wu Yin Meridian, Wu Shaoqi also quickly arrived. With her strength, there were not many monsters in illusory spirit space that could affect her. Naturally, she did not care about those origin beads. Nodding to Wu Shaoqi, Xiao Yan took the lead and rushed into the canyon. The crimson gold flames on both of his palms curled up, and he paid full attention to them. He used his enormous soul power to scout the way, and Wu Shaoqi followed closely behind Xiao Yan. She vigilantly observed everything around her. If there was even the slightest movement of the wind and grass, the two of them would instantly launch a fierce attack. This place, apart from the two of them, the rest of them were enemies. After passing through the canyon tunnel without any danger, the one who appeared in front of them. It was still an endless sea of blood, the sea of blood constantly boiling. However, there was not a single monster that appeared. It made sense. The existence of the Blood Eye had used up a lot of energy to let Wu Shaoqi enter the place where the ancient expert fell. Now, there were not many origin chis left for the 5 elemental origins extraction formation to absorb. Naturally, it could not be transformed into a monster anymore. Can you feel it? Looking at the boiling blood sea, Xiao Yan turned his head to look at Wu Shaoqi who was beside him. The latter closed her eyes and carefully felt for a moment. When she opened her eyes again, there was a trace of wild joy in her eyes. There is one thing. Although it is not very clear, it is much better than outside. She looked at Xiao Yan with joy on her face. Wu Shaoqi's face was full of smiles. Although it was only 15 days, it was enough for her to comprehend the Fire Emperor scripture. Xiao Yan also smiled with relief. Wu Shaoqi was able to comprehend the Fire Emperor scripture 1 day earlier. In 4 academies competition, the chances of the Yunluo Academy obtaining the Fire Emperor scripture would only increase by a little. Naturally, he was happy to see this. How are you going to cultivate? After calming down from her joy, Wu Shaoqi looked at Xiao Yan once again and asked in a soft voice. If it was because of her that Xiao Yan's cultivation was delayed, she would rather go out. Let me ask first. Xiao Yan smiled bitterly and walked straight to the edge of the blood sea. What he said stunned Wu Shaoqi. Ask? Ask who? Kai. Xiao Yan's body was instantly covered by the monarch flame. He hesitated for a moment, then slowly squatted down and reached his hand into the blood sea. Instantly, an unbearable corrosive feeling surged from all directions, causing Xiao Yan to suck in a breath of cold air. The palm that reached into the blood sea. He clenched his fist tightly, then opened his 5 fingers. Under the control of the Origin Monarch Chi, a flame gushed out from the palm of his hand. In the next moment, the blood sea started violently shaking. Boom! The endless blood sea rose up in an instant. Under Xiao Yan's complicated expression, it slowly condensed into a huge blood eye. In the blood eye, the millstone-sized eyeball rotated slowly, shooting out a frightening gaze that instantly locked onto Xiao Yan. Wu Shaoqi was staring at the blood eye from afar with her mouth agape. After a moment of shock, she calmed down immediately and looked at Xiao Yan. She now had a hint of understanding in her heart. "It's you. Have you reached the Emperor cultivation?" When she saw the monarch flame surging on Xiao Yan's body, the blood eye rolled its eyes. A voice filled with wild joy resounded throughout the valley. "No, but I need your help. This way, I can reach the Emperor cultivation as soon as possible." Xiao Yan raised his head and looked at the blood-red eyes and said in a clear voice. Now, he had the ability to talk to the blood-red eyes. Before the latter came out, he had to make use of it as much as possible. "Speak." Hearing Xiao Yan's words, the blood eye couldn't help but feel disappointed. Then, it said in a low voice, "I need a place with sufficient origin cheese." Xiao Yan didn't stand on ceremony and said straightforwardly, "You brat, do you really think I am the master of this illusory spirit space? You can have whatever you want?" A deep roar came from the blood eye. Previously, in order to help Wu Shaoqi obtain the ancient inheritance, he had lost more than half of his origin qi, but he had yet to recover in such a short period of time. He was already furious in his heart, and when he heard Xiao Yan's words, he immediately roared out. Hearing the roar from the blood eye, Xiao Yan gently smiled and said in a clear voice, "I need a sufficient amount of origin cheese to restore my monarch flame. If I'm lucky, I will be able to obtain 3 monarch flames, and my strength will also greatly increase. At that time, the quality of the body I will refine for you will be even better. Perhaps, I will be able to help you return to your peak a day earlier." Narrowing his eyes, Xiao Yan spread out his palms and said, "Since you don't have any, then forget it." After saying that, he turned around and left. "Wait a minute, is what you said true?" Hearing Xiao Yan's words, the blood eye immediately let out a furious roar. The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. He calmly turned around to look at the blood eye and said, "Of course it's true." "Wu!" A conflicted voice came from the blood eye. Although he knew that this was Xiao Yan's goading, he had to admit that this method was too tempting to him. "All right, I'll give you this place. If you dare to trick me, I'll make you beg for death." After struggling for a moment, a vicious voice came from the blood eye. The curse that spread out from the blood eye made Xiao Yan's heart tremble. Then, a wild joy surged into his heart. "I will now send you to the center of the illusory spirit space. There are countless origin monarch crystal left behind by countless experts after their fall. Although most of the origin monarch crystal are damaged, there are still some that are still in good condition. Due to the spatial lock, those origin cheese cannot come out." After a pause, a deep voice came out from the blood eye. "Remember, if I use up my origin to let you enter, I will also suffer great damage. The time I have to survive will also be reduced. If I die, you won't be able to live either." Xiao Yan nodded silently, and subconsciously touched his forehead. There was a blood origin seed there, and it was threatening him at any time. HMPH. Upon seeing Xiao Yan agree, the blood eye harumphed coldly. In the next moment, the surrounding space cracked inch by inch, and numerous spatial cracks appeared. The frenzied spatial turbulence whizzed past the cracks. "Oh right, that's my friend. I hope you can take care of him for me." Xiao Yan pointed at Wu Shaoqi who was behind him and said respectfully, not caring if the blood eye had heard him or not. "All right, if you want to come out, just use your mind to communicate with the blood origin seed." After a while, there was a rapid breathing in the blood eye. It was obvious that it had used up a lot of energy. Nodding to Wu Shaoqi, Xiao Yan jumped and entered the spatial crack in the air. In an instant, he lost his figure. Wu Shaoqi watched Xiao Yan leave with her eyes. She looked at the blood eye with a frightened look and found an inconspicuous place. She also entered into a state of cultivation and focused all of her attention on comprehending the Fire Emperor scripture. When Xiao Yan entered, a red light flashed in the blood eye. The spatial crack also disappeared. It looked at Wu Shaoqi coldly. The blood eye then turned into a sea of blood and poured down. The sea of blood was less than half of its original size. What entered his eyes was a dusky space. Powerful origin monarch qis were overflowing in all directions, causing Xiao Yan, who had just appeared, to feel suffocated. He was almost hit to the ground. What is this place? Xiao Yan raised his head and looked over. His sharp soul force was completely useless in this place. It could not penetrate through it all. He could only rely on his eyes to size it up. In the distance, the origin monarch qis were even denser, and they were viscous into liquid form. After carefully feeling it for a moment, the wild joy in Xiao Yan's eyes instantly disappeared. The origin monarch qi in this place could not be absorbed and refined at all. This caused Xiao Yan's idea of cultivating here to fail. The Xiao Ao appeared on Xiao Yan's shoulder at this moment. He looked around in shock and couldn't help but exclaim, "The origin monarch qi here is actually so dense. It's almost the same as all the origin qis stored within a saint body." As he spoke, the Xiao Ao's small hand made a grabbing motion in the void. Its small nose moved, and it stuck out its tongue. "Xiao Yan, the origin monarch qis here aren't suitable for your cultivation. These origin monarch qis have been here for a long time, and they were also left behind by the ancient experts. Perhaps there are some strange changes." Xiao Yan nodded his head and pondered for a moment. He took out the storage ring that Elder Yi had left behind. The dark black spiritual light on the storage ring flickered continuously. The ancient ruins on the storage ring were mottled. It was obvious that it had been tempered by the passage of time. Xiao Yan sent his soul force into the storage ring and carefully took out a rusty oil lamp. On the wick of the lamp, there was a rusty oil lamp. There was a blue flame that looked like it was about to be extinguished. The flame was like a demonic drop of water that trembled when Xiao Yan took it out, as if it would disappear at any moment. Xiao Yan's heart trembled when he saw it. The blue flame was the monarch flame that Elder Yi once possessed. Refining monarch Hai Tianyan was ranked 24th on the monarch flame. This drop of water was refining monarch Hai Tianyan's sovereign fire source, and it had suffered a great loss. After hesitating for a moment, Xiao Yan gritted his teeth. He covered his palm with the origin qi and slowly took the flame out from the wick. He looked at the vortex-like origin monarch qi and finally steeled his heart. He pushed the flame into the middle of the vortex. At this moment, Xiao Yan was also gambling. If he succeeded, it would be the rebirth of a monarch flame. If he failed, refining monarch Hai Tianyan would completely disappear from this world. 1,000 years later, in a certain corner of the great world. Perhaps he would be born again, just like what Elder Yi had said. Sacred objects were all inheriting the will of the great world, and only one of them would dissipate. The next one would appear. There were no two similar holy objects in the world. Wang! The blue water droplet was pushed to the center of the origin qi whirlpool like a weak wind. The huge origin qi instantly rushed over and completely covered it. Under Xiao Yan's nervous gaze, the last trace of blue light dissipated with a loud bang and was wrapped by the origin qi layer by layer. Xiao Yan's heart thumped when he saw the blue light dissipate. His facial expression changed dramatically. The Xiao Ao could only smack its tongue when it saw this. It thought to itself that Xiao Yan was too reckless. The sovereign fire source of a monarch flame had just vanished from the world just like that. Kai! While Xiao Yan was secretly furious, a glaring blue light suddenly shone from the center of the origin qi whirlpool. After that, the sound of roaring waves suddenly resounded in the sky. In a trance, Xiao Yan saw a boundless blue ocean. Huge waves that could destroy the heaven and earth surged over, as if they were going to shatter thousands of worlds. As the waves surged, all things that dared to block them were completely crushed. Woo! Xiao Yan quickly recovered his senses. In the center of the origin qi vortex, a drop of strange blue water was rotating slowly. It was like a hungry wolf that was choosing to devour its prey, crazily absorbing all the origin monarch qis. It succeeded? Seeing that the drop of water was safe and sound, the Xiao was somewhat dumbfounded. This was the first time he had seen the sovereign fire source recover in such a way. It should be. Xiao Yan took a deep breath. His hanging heart had finally calmed down. Even though he had gone through countless trials and tribulations, the scene just now had scared him to death. Xiao Yan could clearly feel the flow of the origin monarch qis beside him even from a distance. All of them were rushing towards the blue water droplet. In just a moment, Xiao Yan could feel that the surrounding origin monarch qis seemed to have become a little thinner. That's good. The Xiaoao also relaxed and gently exhaled. Xiao Yan calmed down and looked around again. As the origin monarch qi became thinner, he could see more places. When he saw a place, his eyes widened and his face was filled with disbelief. Where he looked, he saw a huge axe that was the size of a mountain. It was quietly floating in the air, and on top of it was a huge axe that was the size of a mountain. It had been corroded by the rust of time. The handle of the axe was broken. Although it was protected by the origin monarch qi, it had lost its original power and turned into a pile of scrap metal. Such a powerful weapon. Could it be that the ancient experts have the giant tribe? Xiao Yan widened his eyes and looked at the mountain axe at the end of his line of sight as he mumbled to himself. It's not a giant tribe, it should be an extraordinary expert of the barbarian region. The expert amongst them can turn his body into the size of a mountain. He can be considered the strongest tribe in the great world. The Xiaoao swallowed a mouthful of water. In the past, he had only heard of it. This was the first time he had seen such a large weapon, and it shocked him. To be able to survive for so long, he should have at least reached the level of a sacred artifact. What a pity! What a pity! The Xiaoao was filled with regret. Even sacred artifacts had become a pile of scrap metal. Even the true Supreme Saint had turned into dust in the passage of time. Xiao Yan nodded silently. Although the ultimate saint expert was immortal, it referred to the seed of the soul. The physical body and even the soul would still dissipate. Only the consciousness would remain. However, in this place, no matter how powerful the consciousness was, it would ultimately scatter into all things, allowing all things to obtain a trace of spirituality. Xiao Yan's body moved, and he slowly walked forward. Refining monarch Hai Tianyan's recovery temporarily did not need him, and he was unable to cultivate here. He could only walk around and see for himself. Perhaps there would be some ancient expert left behind. Xiao Yan, look! The Xiaoao suddenly cried out. Xiao Yan looked in the direction of his finger and saw a huge dragon floating at the end of his line of sight. The huge dragon had a ferocious face, and its body looked like it was made of molten iron. It was filled with unparalleled strength. Even though they were thousands of miles away, Xiao Yan could still feel the coldness coming from the scales of the huge dragon. This is probably the descendant of the four spirits from the previous generations, and its body is incomparably strong. That's why its body didn't dissipate like a human's. It's a pity that it's already a dried corpse. Otherwise, if I could obtain a drop of blood essence, the Azure Dragon Arts would definitely be able to reach the level of the Holy Arts. The Xiaoao let out a regretful sigh. He mumbled to himself. Xiao Yan smiled bitterly when he heard this. Even if he didn't become a dried corpse, it was difficult for him to even walk with every step he took here. How could he fly to the dragon's side? Even if he could, how could he fly to the dragon's side? With his little ability, could he even bleed the dragon? Just based on his feeling. The toughness of the dragon's body was far beyond that of the dark golden beast, perhaps even a monarch cultivation warrior. Hong Long, shaking his head, Xiao Yan once again walked forward. He was blocked by the thick origin monarch qi. Every step he took consumed a lot of energy. After walking for about half an hour, Xiao Yan once again saw something drifting in the air. It was only a few steps away from Xiao Yan, but it looked rather familiar. It was a millstone-sized iron ore. Starlight flickered on it, but it was not damaged at all. There were exactly 2 pieces of this kind of fine iron ore in Xiao Yan's storage ring. The refined iron ore quietly floated in front of Xiao Yan, as if it was a sacred object that had transcended the mortal world. Starlight emerged, and at a glance, it looked extremely profound and profound. Numerous profound patterns were inscribed on it, and it was filled with an inexplicable feeling. Xiao Yan hesitated for a moment, and the origin qi on his palms surged. He took a few steps forward and firmly grabbed the refined iron ore in his hand. The moment he grabbed the iron ore, Xiao Yan immediately felt a violent disturbance coming from the storage ring between his fingers. In the next moment, the storage ring directly shattered. A pile of items appeared out of thin air. A refined iron ore rushed out from a brocade box. It impaled a corner of the refined iron ore in front of him without any blemishes. Xiao Yan looked at the refined iron ore in front of him with a shocked expression. With this embedding, the charm of the entire ore became even more complicated. An indescribable feeling reverberated in Xiao Yan's heart. The Xiao Ao, which was sitting on Xiao Yan's shoulder, also locked its gaze on this ore. It took a long while before it finally spoke in a somewhat hesitant manner. Xiao Yan, this shape looks very familiar. Xiao Yan nodded with a solemn expression. This piece of ore was extremely similar to a ruler. On it was engraved a mysterious pattern, as if it was written with tens of thousands of truths. If there is a ruler's handle that is a bit longer, it would be completely a huge ruler. Xiao Yan took the ore over with great effort. He rubbed the top and bottom of the ore with his palm, and sure enough, there were traces of it being damaged. Xiao Yan, you must keep this thing well. I have a feeling that something is unusual. With a flash in his eyes, the Xiao Ao said with a serious expression. This was the first time his words were so serious. I know, Xiao Yan nodded with a solemn expression. This iron mine had appeared in various places over and over again, and even here. It was destined to be extraordinary. He put away the huge steel, freed up a storage ring, and then picked up everything. Xiao Yan looked into the distance once again. This space seemed endless, and he had no idea where it ended. After walking for less than 100 times, he had already used up more than half of the origin monarch qi in his body. Sure enough, this was not a place an ordinary person could stay. Shaking his head, Xiao Yan decided to turn around and go back. Although he was filled with endless curiosity about this space, he still had to act according to his own ability. If the origin monarch qi was used up, and he was trapped in some place, then it would really be hard for him to do anything. Just as Xiao Yan turned around and was about to leave, the little nose of the Xiao Ao suddenly wrinkled as if it had sensed something. The little hand immediately grabbed Xiao Yan's hair and said, "Don't go back yet. There seems to be something in front of us." Xiao Yan smiled bitterly and was about to explain to the Xiao Ao when the Xiao Ao stared blankly into the distance and said softly, "Why do I feel that the injuries in my body have improved a little?" What? Xiao Yan was clearly shocked when he heard what the Xiao Ao said. Immediately, he turned around and looked into the distance. Without any hesitation, he took a step forward. If there was really something that could heal the injuries in the Xiao Ao's body, Xiao Yan would not hesitate to move forward no matter how dangerous the environment was. "Can you feel what it is?" Xiao Yan said softly. The origin monarch qi here had become extremely dense once again. Even one's sight could not see far. They could only rely on the feeling of the Xiao Ao to move forward. "I don't know." The Xiao Ao frowned slightly. That feeling made him not know how to say it out loud. After thinking for a while, the Xiao Ao's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly said, "I remember now. This was the feeling of a formation. There is a big formation ahead. You must be careful." "Formation?" Xiao Yan was shocked at first, then he nodded. In this strange space, Xiao Yan wouldn't find anything strange. If it's really a formation, then it means that someone had entered this place during the ancient times. Otherwise, they wouldn't have turned a blind eye to these things. The Xiao Ao pondered for a moment before speaking. Then, it thought of the dried corpse of the giant dragon. No matter what, it was a holy beast. Even the scale armor on its body was an inestimable treasure. Does this mean that this formation has a longer time than this spatial zone? Xiao Yan's heart skipped a beat. It's possible. The Xiao Ao could not think of a reason. It knocked its head and muttered. Seeing this, Xiao Yan did not say anything else. His heart was filled with energy towards the unknown ahead. Although after so many years, even a supreme saint would die. Not to mention other things, who knew what would happen in this mysterious place? Around an hour later, Xiao Yan finally passed through the dense origin qi fog. The origin monarch qis within his body were almost completely exhausted. When the origin qi in front of him slowly dissipated, what appeared in front of him was an incomparably huge altar. The altar was extremely majestic, like a majestic palace. There were many stone statues carved on the altar. They stood in different directions, as if they were maintaining a grand formation. However, the erosion of time had already caused these stone statues to be in tatters. Even though they were in such a mysterious space, they were still unable to escape the power of time. Xiao Yan carefully walked up to the altar and looked at the various stone statues. Some of the stone statues only had their arms broken, but he could still recognize them. There were men and women, old men and young men among the stone statues. Judging from the material of the statues, it was obvious that they were of extraordinary quality. However, they didn't have any spirituality, and were lifeless. They had completely turned into stone puppets. After a careful count, including some of the collapsed stone statues, there were a total of 108 stone statues on the altar. The position they were standing at felt strange, but Xiao Yan could not tell what was going on. Such a big investment. Building such a huge altar here, one person definitely can't build it by himself. Looks like this should be a sect. Shaking his little head, the Xiaoao had its own way of doing things, even though he didn't believe it himself. This altar has existed for such a long time. It must be a world-shocking formation, but unfortunately, it has no effect at all. Xiao Yan stood up, his eyes swept across the entire altar and said with a sigh. Under the guidance of the Xiaoao, Xiao Yan went straight to the center of the altar. In the middle of a formation that no longer had any spiritual energy, there was a cracked beast core. Another useless thing. Seeing this beast core, the Xiaoao curled its lips. A beast core that could maintain this formation was at least a saint core. Unfortunately, it had already become a useless piece of wood. As he spoke, the Xiaoao jumped down from Xiao Yan's shoulder. The flames around its body began to grow. With a special feeling, the Xiaoao suddenly punched out and violently smashed onto the circular formation. A crack actually appeared on the formation. The crack had just appeared when it instantly spread out. In the next moment, following a rumbling sound, the formation directly shattered, revealing the mysterious foundation of the formation below. Within the array base, 5 saint nuclei were embedded in the 5 corners, providing the array with an endless amount of energy. But now, it had already lost all effect. Ignoring the 5 sacred cores, the Xiaoao's eyes stared intently at the center of the array base. There was a black bone the size of an arm standing there quietly. Occasionally, a spiritual light flashed on the bone, but it had yet to lose its spirituality. This is. The Xiaoao's eyes revealed endless shock. Xiao Yan looked at it curiously. With just a glance, he seemed to have locked onto Xiao Yan's soul. It was as if his body had been frozen on the spot. No matter how he struggled, it was useless. Dragon Soul Bone. After opening his mouth, the Xiaoao finally spoke with a trembling voice. Sweat even dripped down from his forehead. At the same time, the shock in his eyes was quickly replaced by wild joy. This time, whether it was Xiao Yan or himself, they had profited greatly. The Xiaoao excitedly looked at Xiao Yan. He saw that the latter was staring at the Dragon Soul Bone in front of the array with lifeless eyes. It was as if his soul had sunk into it. The Xiaoao suddenly woke up and looked around. After which, it took off its clothes and covered the Dragon Soul Bone. The endless light in front of him seemed to have suddenly disappeared. Xiao Yan's eyes gradually focused. It was a long time before he regained consciousness. He blinked his eyes. Xiao Yan hurriedly took a step back, and looked at the black bone that was covered by the Xiaoao's clothes. His heart was instantly filled with thousands of wild waves. What exactly was this thing? With just a glance, his soul was about to sink into it. His consciousness almost dissipated. What is this thing? Xiao Yan sucked in a breath of cold air with lingering fear. He looked at the Xiaoao and asked. If this thing was used to deal with enemies, it would be an invisible killing weapon. This is a great thing. Seeing that Xiao Yan was fine, the Xiaoao chuckled. His brows were in high spirits, and it was difficult to conceal the excitement in his voice. This thing is called the Dragon Soul Bone. I don't know the exact origin of this thing, but the old man has always dreamt of this thing. Today, he actually found it here. It really is a treasure land. The Xiaoao clicked its tongue in admiration. It looked at the surrounding stone statues and was even more surprised by the existence of the altar. Using a Dragon Soul Bone as the eye of the formation was a huge investment. Compared to the Dragon Soul Bone, the Saint Cores were not enough. Something that even teachers dream of? Hearing the Xiaoao's words, Xiao Yan was even more shocked. He couldn't help but look at the thing that was covered by clothes. What kind of ability did this bone have that made the ultimate saint expert think about it day and night? That's right. The old man also told me that the Dragon Soul Bone is the most important thing when one's soul force breaks through from the ancient stage to the sage realm. The Xiaoao's eyes were burning with passion as he spoke. Sage realm? Xiao Yan's chest felt like it was about to explode when he heard these 2 words. He slowly spat it out. If that was really the case, then the value of this dragon soul bone was immeasurable. Does it also have the effect of healing your injuries? Xiao Yan's heart moved. He immediately looked at the Xiao Ao and spoke in an urgent manner. The injuries of the Xiao Ao were the most important compared to the illusory soul of the sage realm. Yes. The Xiao Ao showed a brilliant smile to Xiao Yan and said firmly. He was extremely touched that someone cared about him so much. The origin of dragon soul bones is extremely rare. Only a few experts of the dragon race have dragon soul bones. I didn't even have one in my previous life. He curled his lips. The Xiao Ao spoke again. This is a special soul bone of the dragon race. It is most suitable for recovering the original injuries. As long as you absorb the dragon chi within, it will be enough. It won't cause any harm to it. Therefore, you can use it to upgrade your soul power in the future. The Xiao Ao giggled. It could heal its own injuries and enhance Xiao Yan's strength at the same time. Today, their luck was extremely good. Alright, you should recover your strength first. Hearing the firm words of the Xiao Ao, Xiao Yan felt relieved in his heart and said with a gratified smile. The Xiao Ao's injuries had been delayed for so long. If it could really recover this time, even if it needed the entire dragon soul bone, he would give it up without hesitation. Most importantly, I think so. The Xiao Ao suddenly said in a low voice. This dragon soul bone is the eye of the array formation. Although the formation is broken, the dragon soul bone still has some effects. Therefore, I guess this formation should be used to control the illusory spirit space. How is that possible? The formation is already broken, but the illusory spirit space is still here. Xiao Yan's face was filled with shock when he heard this. He recalled the powerful existence in the Wu Yin meridian. If the formation in the illusory spirit space was broken, with the strength of that expert, he would be able to escape easily. It's different. Currently, the Xiao Ao's mind was unusually nimble. Combined with the experience from his previous life, he had a very thorough understanding of the highest level of the great world. This formation should be the main formation that controls the illusory spirit space. The formation that trapped that guy is the 5 elements energy seizing formation, a division formation. Although the main formation is damaged, the dragon soul bone's effect is still there. After a pause, the Xiao Ao's voice began to tremble. Apparently, it was frightened by its own crazy idea. The result of the formation being damaged is that the illusory spirit space is constantly drifting in the spatial fault. Due to the existence of the dragon soul bone, the illusory spirit space will occasionally appear in a year and be used by a few academies. Hearing the Xiao Ao's speculation, Xiao Yan couldn't help but be dumbfounded. It took him a long time to recover from his shock. He looked at the center of the formation in disbelief. The dragon soul bone was actually something that would occasionally appear in the illusory spirit space. The Xiao Ao rolled its eyes and said softly, "Anyway, those elders in the academy have already said that the strength of the demons in the illusory spirit space is getting weaker and weaker. This also means that this space is about to be abandoned and has no effect at all. This dragon soul bone cannot be wasted, let's just take it away." Xiao Yan couldn't help but hesitate when he heard this. Whether it was the dragon soul bone or himself, the dragon soul bone would be of great help to both him and the Xiao Ao. However, if he took it away, it would mean that the illusory spirit space would be hidden in the fault of the spatial zone and never appear again. At least for the current 4 academies, it was something that couldn't be allowed to happen. Seeing Xiao Yan hesitate, the Xiao Ao seemed to know the reason why Xiao Yan hesitated. It rubbed its face and there was nothing it could do for a moment. Biting his lips, Xiao Yan looked at the center of the formation, unwilling to give up. He wanted to take a closer look, but the dragon soul bone's mysterious ability was still fresh in his memory, and he didn't dare to rashly open it. The Xiao Ao didn't have much to worry about. It squatted down and lifted a corner of its clothes. It carefully observed everything within the formation base. After a long while, it suddenly jumped up in excitement and said, "Oh right." It could also be that the array is already damaged. However, the energy stored in the formation was also maintaining the appearance and disappearance of the illusory spirit space. The dragon soul bone is the eye of the formation, it can only maintain the stability of the formation. Hearing the Xiao Ao's words, Xiao Yan frowned. He suddenly recalled the words of the existence in the blood eye. He said uncertainly, "Do you think this is what that guy said? Is it possible that he has the ability to control the things in the illusory spirit space?" Upon hearing this, the Xiao Ao was stunned for a moment. Then, It nodded its head in ecstasy and said, "It's definitely possible. If we use the dragon's soul bone, we should be able to enter the illusory spirit space at any time." After listening to the Xiaoao's analysis, Xiao Yan was even more moved. He took a deep breath and no longer hesitated. Step by step, he walked forward. Under the delighted gaze of the Xiaoao, he squatted down and tightly grabbed the dragon's soul bone that was wrapped in the Xiaoao's clothes. He suddenly exerted strength on both of his arms, and without much effort, he took the dragon's soul bone out from the eye of the formation. Buzz! The moment the dragon's soul bone was taken out, the entire altar seemed to buzz. Immediately, all the stone statues disappeared without a trace. At the same time, the 5 saint nuclei in the formation base were also quietly destroyed. The thing in the eye of the formation has been taken out. This formation will no longer exist. Hurry up and leave. There might be a problem with the altar. The Xiaoao had some knowledge about formations when it was still alive. Immediately, it let out a light shout and flew out of the altar together with Xiao Yan. The moment the two of them stepped out of the altar, the incomparably huge altar suddenly let out a soft buzzing sound. Under the gazes of the two of them, it turned into billions of light spots and dissipated, merging into the endless origin monarch cheese. "Let's go," Xiao Yan sighed. From now on, illusory spirit space was an ownerless object. He wanted to summon it from the dimensional fracture. It would probably take even more of the elder's attention. Looking at the tightly wrapped dragon soul bone in his hand, Xiao Yan finally did not have the courage to look at it. After putting it away, he waited for the origin monarch chi to recover. He walked in the direction that the Xiaoao had come from with great difficulty. Behind him was an empty space. There was not a trace of the existence of the altar. Without the support of the dragon's soul bone, this altar that should have been eroded by time. It also disappeared along with it. Too, after passing through the layers of origin cheese, Xiao Yan felt a sense of emptiness in his body. His legs went weak and he almost fell to the ground. The Xiaoao beside him quickly supported him. Xiao Yan smiled bitterly and took out a medicine pill and swallowed it. The origin chi in this space could not be absorbed and refined. Every step he took required a large amount of origin monarch cheese. He could only rely on the medicine pill to barely maintain it. After resting for a moment, Xiao Yan once again got up and walked along the same path as the Xiaoao. Usually, it would only take a few minutes to complete the journey. It would take him half a day to complete it. Not far away, the bewitching blue water droplet was still crazily absorbing the enormous origin monarch chi. It was just like a bottomless pit, and it did not appear to have changed at all. Xiao Yan sighed. He sat cross-legged on the ground and took out the dragon's soul bone that was wrapped by the Xiaoao's clothes. He glanced at it before handing it to the Xiaoao. The latter's face was filled with joy. Just as he was about to open it, he saw Xiao Yan. He stuck out his tongue and walked to the side. With his back facing Xiao Yan, he happily took out the dragon's soul bone. Xiao Yan's spiritual strength was much sharper than the Xiaoao. It was also because of this that he was attracted by the strength contained within the dragon's soul bone. It was as vast and mighty as a vast ocean. Xiao Yan would unknowingly sink into it. When he was unable to resist the strength within it, he temporarily could not look directly at the dragon's soul bone. He saw the Xiaoao begin to heal the injuries in his body. Xiao Yan was delighted in his heart. After such a long time, this little fellow could finally recover. Being unable to absorb and refine the incomparably vast space within the origin monarch chi was also a kind of torture. For a moment, Xiao Yan had nothing to do. He couldn't consume origin cheese to cultivate the monarch skill, so he could only sit there quietly with his legs crossed. He recalled the deficiencies of cultivating the monarch skill and the methods that Mu Yuyang and Lin Dao had shown him that day. He hoped that he would be able to understand something. The Xiaoao's expression was solemn, and it changed from its previously smiling face. Placing the dragon's soul bone in front of him, the Xiaoao's eyes were tightly shut. S on its body surged, and very quickly. An illusionary purple dragon shadow rushed out from the top of its head. The dragon shadow was extremely small. After wandering in the air for a moment, it rushed forward and tightly surrounded the dragon's soul bone. The dark black dragon's soul bone was also shining with an unusual spiritual light. It repeatedly washed the illusory body of the purple dragon shadow. The purple dragon shadow swallowed the spiritual light in large gulps, and the spiritual light entered its mouth. It quietly turned into a stream of dragon chi and walked around the body of the purple dragon shadow. At the same time, the trace of sickly fatigue between Xiaoao's eyebrows seemed to be slowly fading away. "Hey, that little girlfriend of yours is calling you. She said that it's time to go out." A cold voice suddenly sounded in Xiao Yan's mind while he was immersed in his mental cultivation. It immediately woke him up. He glanced at the demonic water droplet that was still crazily devouring the Origin Monarch Chi and the motionless Xiaoao. A trace of hesitation flashed across his heart. He was just about to get up when he saw a white cloth beside him. It seemed to be wrapped by something. Xiao Yan touched it with his hand. Based on the feeling, he knew that it was the dragon's soul bone. It seemed that the Xiaoao had already been used, but it had not woken up for a long time. After hesitating for a while, Xiao Yan gave up the idea of waking the Xiaoao and also decided to go out. No matter what, he could not let the people of the academy become suspicious, let alone let Xuan and Kai Lin worry. "I hope it is useful." After putting away the dragon soul bone wrapped in white cloth, Xiao Yan mumbled to himself. Then his mind moved and he seemed to vaguely find a fire source seed in his mind. The voice resounded in his mind from here. "How am I going to get out?" Through his mind, Xiao Yan said quietly, "This spatial zone belongs to the deepest level. Only I can get you out of here. With just you alone, don't even think about it." A cold voice was heard. Xiao Yan instantly felt an irresistible force appearing out of nowhere and wrapping around him. In the next moment, Xiao Yan had already disappeared from this spatial zone. Only the Xiaoao, which had its eyes closed, and the blue water droplet that was crazily swallowing the Origin Monarch Chi remained. It looked extremely strange. "Wah!" Xiao Yan opened his eyes and appeared in the canyon. In front of him was Wu Shaoqi, who was anxiously waiting. Wu Shaoqi could not help but smile when she saw Xiao Yan. She hurriedly said, "It's time. The spatial crack has appeared. Let's hurry and get out of here. Otherwise, the Elder's Origin Chi will not be able to hold on any longer. We can only wait for the next time." Nodding his head, Xiao Yan turned around and cupped his fists at Blood Eye. "I have a feeling about my cultivation in that spatial zone. Please send me in the next time I come in." After saying that, he pulled Wu Shaoqi and rushed out of the canyon without waiting for Blood Eye to speak. They were blocked by the Origin Chi in that spatial zone, and every step they took was incomparably difficult. Now that they were speeding in that spatial zone, it felt incomparably wonderful. "Bastard brat, what did you say?" After being slightly stunned, Blood Eye immediately flew into a rage and roared with a hoarse voice. This time, Xiao Yan had used up almost half of his Origin Chi to get into the canyon, and this brat was thinking of going in again. Did he really think that spatial zone was his home? He could come and go as he pleased? After the anger dissipated, the Blood Eye seemed to have gone silent for a moment. Then, he mumbled to himself, "This guy, where can his strength really be increased? But this guy can survive. That's good too. I heard that there are good things inside the altar. Once you have a body, you must go inside and look for it. I wonder if the 108 stone golems can still be used." After muttering to himself, the Blood Eye turned into a boundless sea of blood and landed in the valley. "By the way, how did you call that guy out?" Xiao Yan suddenly looked at Wu Shaoqi and asked curiously. He had used the Monarch Flame to call out the Blood Eye. Wu Shaoqi was able to call out even without the Monarch Flame, so he was not surprised. Wu Shaoqi looked at Xiao Yan with her beautiful eyes and chuckled. She raised her arm and gently moved her 5 fingers. A burning green flame slowly emerged from her palm. As the two of them ran, the green flame also gently swayed. It looked like a green lotus dancing in the wind. This is the flame that I have comprehended these days. According to the description of the Fire Emperor scripture, it can condense the fire source chi in my body into a flame. It is called the Green Fiery Flame. The large success Green Fiery Flame is even stronger than an ordinary Monarch Flame. Wu Shaoqi said proudly when she saw Xiao Yan's shocked expression. So powerful. Xiao Yan couldn't help but sigh when he heard this. After thinking about it carefully, he felt that it was reasonable. With Flame Lord's terrifying strength, his control over the Fire Emperor scripture was far beyond Wu Shaoqi's current strength. Moreover, the Fire Emperor scripture itself was at least a saint-grade cultivation technique. It was reasonable for the green flame that he cultivated to be comparable to an ordinary Monarch Flame. "I called that guy out just like you did before. That guy seemed to know me as well. so he didn't say anything and brought you out. He recalled the Blood Eye's roar just now. Wu Shaoqi stuck out her tongue and said. Xiao Yan nodded and didn't say anything else. The matter of the dragon's soul bone was deeply buried in his heart. Before his strength became stronger, even Xuan Er and Kai Lin could not say it. It wasn't that he didn't believe them, but that it had too much to do with them. If others knew about it, it was estimated that Yunluo Academy. All of them would be implicated. After all, for some of the overlords in the pill world whose soul strength had reached the ancient stage, the dragon's soul bone. Enough to make them give up everything. After hurriedly walking out of the canyon, the two of them immediately saw a spatial crack a short distance away. Without any hesitation, their bodies flashed and the two of them exited the crack. The crack trembled and closed the moment they exited. Clearly, the elders outside had exhausted all their origin cheese.